What's going on, guys? I'm your host, Jason Grubbs, and this is the Do Not Diminish podcast, the show where we tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. Have you ever been asked to prove that God is real? As Christians, we probably get this question more than most. But the good news is the answer is all around us. Let's talk about the evidence we have to prove that God is legit. This is episode 38. Let's dive on in. Welcome to episode 38 of the Do Not Diminish podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about some hard evidence that we have to prove that God is real. And the inspiration for today's episode came from a question I got on Instagram about a month or so ago. Somebody had commented on one of my Wisdom Wednesday posts, and they said something to the effect of, "You don't seriously believe this, do you?" And I said, "Of course, why wouldn't I?" And then they said, "Well, prove that God is real." Now, I didn't take the time to sit there and prove it to them. I told them they can look it up and I'll be praying for them. And if they're truly honest and truly open about wanting to know if God is real or not, God will give them the answer that they need. And I truly believe that. But before we get into this episode, I wanted to give you guys that little anecdote because it is very important that if you get asked that question, you got to understand the audience that's asking it. If the person is asking it because they're honestly seeking God, then 100% pray, ask the Holy Spirit to show you what to say to them, and do your best to show them or give them any kind of evidence that you know of that's going to resonate with them. That is the perfect thing. But if the person is not honestly seeking for an answer, they're just looking to argue with you or looking for you to say something that they could try to disprove and prove is wrong and just have an argument, like I said, about it, then that's the kind of person that you don't want to waste any type of time talking about this subject with them, because it's not going to help them. It's not going to help you. It's just a big waste of everybody's time. Because the evidence, as you're going to see in today's episode, the evidence is plentiful that God is real. It's more so that people choose not to believe that God is real because they don't want to have to change their lives. They like whatever kind of lifestyle they're living. They don't want God to have a say. They want it to all be under their control, and that is their choice. But the reason they don't believe is not because it's impossible to believe, or it's not because it's hard to believe, or it takes a lot of faith to believe. It's only because they don't want to believe, because it would change their lifestyle in a way that they don't want to change. So those kind of people, you don't want to waste any time presenting any evidence to them because it's not going to do them any good. But somebody who has an open heart, who actually wants to know about God, and maybe they just don't know or they haven't been told about these things, then absolutely, let's share with them. So today's episode is for those kind of people, and it's also for us who are strong believers already to strengthen ourselves. Maybe you'll learn a little bit, some new piece of evidence about God that you didn't know before that you can share with somebody, or also just to strengthen ourselves, because we all have seasons where we don't really feel God as much. We're not sensitive to Him, and maybe we're going through some struggles that cause us to doubt or cause us to fear. And it's okay for us to have doubts. It's okay for us to have questions, but God wants to work those things in us. He wants us to have faith over fear and faith over our doubts, or courage in the face of struggles. So we got to make sure that we understand what we believe, and these things are going to bolster us and strengthen our faith in God. And it should give us more hope and make us even stronger Christians. So that's my hope for this episode today. I hope you guys really enjoy it. If there's any part that particular stood out, go ahead and leave a comment, especially if you're on YouTube. That helps the video get shown to other people who may not be exposed to it. So let's dive on in today. So there are tons and tons of ways to know that God is real. But for today's episode, I'm just going to focus on three major categories. And those categories are the sciences, archaeological evidence, and prophecy. And these are three concrete areas that you can touch, you can hold with your hand, and you can see that God is real. And I'm going to go over some posts that I saw on Instagram over the past week, because when I felt inspired by God to do this episode this week, lo and behold, what do you know? All the posts that I came across on Instagram all had to do with this subject. So I saved quite a few of them. I'll put the links in the description box on YouTube in case you want to go check them out yourself. And I'll also show them on the screen. So the first category that we're going to be looking at is science. And I said this in a Wisdom Wednesday post not too long ago, that just human biology and the complexity of our bodies, it proves that there's so many intricate systems that work together, and in a lot of ways that we still to this day don't fully understand. It proves that there was a design behind it. it wasn't just random, because you can't get order, especially order on that magnitude, to come out of nothing. Even if you wait millions and billions and trillions of years, it's never going to happen, because things are always breaking down over time, not building up over time. So let's look at the category of science and see how science proves the existence of God. And this first post I want to look at is about a professor from Harvard, and let's hear what he said. The post said, Harvard scientist says math proves the existence of God. Harvard astrophysicist Dr. Willie Soon has revealed evidence that mathematics itself proves God's existence. Citing the work of physicist Paul Dirac, Soon explains how the universe operates on a precise mathematical laws that are too perfect to be random. He said, the deeper we go into physics and math, the more it proves this world was designed, Soon states. He points to fundamental constants, gravity, electromagnetism, and nuclear forces, all fine-tuned to an impossible degree. And this doctor, I mean, obviously it's great we got somebody at Harvard saying this, but he's not the only one. The best scientists that we've had all throughout history, people like Sir Isaac Newton and others, Pascal, they were all believers, and they used their faith to further their knowledge in science and mathematics, because they understood that, hey, there's a system going on here, and these phenomenon that I'm observing, it can all be explained once I understand what's going on under the hood. Once I understand the equations, the math behind it, there are rules that are being followed. Like this professor said, it's all fine-tuned to an impossible degree. Things that have a system are never things that are random, because by nature, things that are random, there is no order to it. It's just chaos. So the fact that we have science, the fact that we can calculate things, it proves that there is a creator who created a system to work in a certain way. And all of these things have to work just perfectly for there to be life on the earth, for you and I to be talking right now, for you and I to be recording, or for me to be recording, for you to be watching this podcast. All those things have to work just perfectly. And if one little thing was out of balance, the whole thing would explode. And so that in and of itself proves that there is God and there is a creator who put it all together. It could not have come about due to randomness. So let's look at this next post, and it's going to show several things that were talked about in the Bible that science discovered later on. So this post is titled, Scientific Discoveries the Bible Got Right Before Science. Meaning these are things that were declared in the Word of God before mankind ever really searched them out and found them out to be true. Number 1, the universe had a beginning. Big Bang and Genesis 1:1. Science confirms the Big Bang theory shows the universe had a beginning, just as Genesis 1:1 states, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Supporting studies, they had Edwin Hubble's discovery of the universe expanding in the late 1920s. And cosmic microwave background radiation confirms a beginning point in 1965. And a physicist, he was a Nobel Prize winner also, said the Big Bang theory aligns with the Bible's creation account. Now, this doesn't mean that the exact way they describe the Big Bang theory is exactly how God did it, but it does show, just like God said, that there was a beginning for our universe being created. Now, the funny thing is, for all the people that only subscribe to the Big Bang theory in absence of there being a God who did it, the funny thing is, they may have very well discovered how God created the universe without even giving him credit for it, which is funny and stupid at the same time. Because the Bible talks about God speaking things into existence. God saying, now let there be light. And so if you were to speak something and it was created, it would be a sudden burst on the scene like they described the Big Bang. So they very well could have discovered the mechanism that God used to create the universe, all while not giving him credit for it. That would be both hilarious and sad. Let's go to the next one. Number 2, the fine-tuning of the universe, evidence for intelligent design. It says the universe is finely tuned for life, meaning even the tiniest change would make life impossible. This aligns with Isaiah chapter 45, verse 18, which says, God did not create the earth to be empty, but formed it to be inhabited. And the supporting studies are, an Oxford physicist said he calculated the odds of our universe being formed by chance, and they're 1 in 10 to the 10 to the 123rd. If you were to actually write that number down, you know how many, your hand would probably cramp up before you could write all those zeros. That basically means it's impossible to be a random occurrence. And the anthropic principle shows constants like gravity, the speed of light, and nuclear forces are perfectly set for life. So this goes back similar to what Dr. Soon was saying in the previous post we looked at. Everything is set up just perfectly for life to exist on the earth in a way that our bodies could live and the animals could live and plant life and everything like that. We have just enough water, we have just enough oxygen, all those types of things in the right balance. If any one of those things was out of balance, then we wouldn't be able to exist in the form that we are. So it shows you that everything is fine-tuned. And look at that number that physicist put on that. That's an impossible number. You could win the lotto 1,000,000,000 times before this number would ever get hit. So it lets you know that it's impossible for these things to be random. Number 3, the water cycle in the Bible. So this is described in Job 36 and also in Ecclesiastes. And it says the Bible accurately describes the water cycle before science understood it. So modern meteorology proves evaporation, condensation, and precipitation exactly as it's described in Job chapter 36. So we know the water cycle today. We understand that when it rains, it's going to get absorbed into the earth, and it's going to evaporate, and it's going to condense again, then it's going to rain again, and it's going to follow this cycle. And Job talked about this thousands and thousands of years ago before science ever really studied it and confirmed it like we know it is. Number 4, the expanding universe. So science confirms the universe is expanding just as the Bible said thousands of years ago. He stretches out the heavens like a curtain. So if you can imagine, like I got this curtain right here behind me, imagine God just stretching that thing out. That's all the stars, that's all the planets, the heavens, all getting stretched out and just expanding over time, which we now know happens. But God had talked about this thousands of years ago. And this goes back to the Hubble discovery, and also NASA's got some new discoveries on it as well, confirming that the universe is constantly expanding. So that does go with a good description of what God said in Isaiah chapter 40. Okay, number 5. This is a big one. I can't remember if we had an episode on this before. I think we did. This is on biblical dietary laws and health. This is from Leviticus and Deuteronomy. Because people usually will ask, those books are some of the hardest books for people to get through because it's listing all these rules that God had for his people. But just like anything else, God doesn't waste his words. He tells us things for a reason, and everything has a purpose, and the purpose is for our good and for his glory. So science confirms that the unclean animals in Leviticus, pork, shellfish, they carry more diseases and toxins than the clean animals. And studies show pork and parasites. The CDC confirms that pork carries, I'm gonna butcher this word, but trichinosis and tapeworms. We know that. So if you undercook pork or something, you have a high chance of getting sick. And shellfish and toxins. Studies show shellfish accumulate high levels of toxins and heavy metals. And we know that those shellfish, they're along the bottom of whatever sea that they're in, just eating all the waste and leftover stuff. So it makes sense that they have so many toxins in their body. And that's why God didn't want his people eating them, because he was trying to preserve them and keep them healthy. And circumcision in health. Studies confirm that male circumcision, this is referenced in Genesis 17, reduces infection and disease risk. So again, the way that God chose to mark his people physically to show that they were the people of God, even that had health benefits. Because I heard one person say before, I think they commented on either my Instagram or one of my YouTube videos that, that's mutilation. And that's not. It's not mutilation. Look, it has good reasons. Number one, it was a physical thing that was signifying a spiritual thing. And then also, God is so good, it had physical benefits. So again, our wisdom is down here. God's wisdom is on a whole nother level, and the two are not even close. Let's go to number 6, the earth's free floating position. So Job 26:7, science confirms the Bible correctly states that the earth is suspended in space, unlike ancient myths that claim the world rested on animals or pillars. So if you look at other religions, they all thought, I think in Greek mythology, or maybe it's Roman, they thought Atlas, there was this big god holding the world up. Other religions had an elephant or some kind of animal holding the world up. Didn't realize that it's suspended in space, but God knew it was, and the Bible says it. And so NASA and images, obviously we have images of the earth from outside, confirm what Job said in Job 26:7, where he said he hangs the earth on nothing. and it was scientifically correct thousands of years ahead of its time before it was ever confirmed. So again, another thing that the Bible declared as truth before, thousands of years later, it took us as mankind to catch up. So we're pretty slow on this thing, but hopefully we keep making progress. Okay, number 7, ocean currents and paths of the sea, from Psalms 8, verse 8. Science confirms Psalms 8, verse 8 refers to paths of the sea, which matches the discovery of ocean currents. So Matthew Maury in the 1800s, the father of oceanography, he discovered ocean currents by studying this verse and mapping the Gulf Stream and trade winds. Modern studies show ocean currents regulate global temperatures and marine life. So before mankind ever really knew it, God had already confirmed this in a psalm that there are paths in the sea, there are currents down there. And this, for some reason, made me think of Finding Nemo, when you had the turtles and everything, and they're on those ocean currents. Yeah, that type of stuff exists. So again, something God declared before mankind knew about it. Number 8, human DNA and a single female ancestor. They're calling this mitochondrial Eve. So science confirms genetic studies show all humans trace back to one woman, also called mitochondrial Eve, aligning with the biblical Eve. So in 1987, Can, Stoking, and Wilson's DNA study found that all modern humans share a common female ancestor. And there's a Y chromosome atom. Studies confirm all men descend from one male ancestor. So they've got it on both sides, the male and the female side. They show that we all originate back to one man and one woman. And of course, we all know the story of Adam and Eve. And for many years, so many people have been saying, oh no, that's impossible. It never worked out that way. But look at here, we got the evidence, the DNA evidence. So let's see what they can say now. So that's it for the sciencey side of things. Now, there are many more things I could point to, but we only have so much time on this podcast. And I apologize if I'm talking kind of fast going through these, but there's a lot to get through. And again, we only have a little bit amount of time, and I want to present you guys a decent amount so that you have something to take home with you and discuss with your family and friends. And maybe that questioning person who is honestly seeking God, maybe one of these will resonate with them. So that was the science section. Now let's move on to the archaeological evidence, because the science section, of course, is proving everything that God said in the Word. But some people may tend to believe, well, that just proves that there is a God or that there is a creator. Doesn't necessarily prove that it's the God you're talking about, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. So let's see that. Let's see if that's true. Even though these things we're getting came from the Bible and God wrote those things through mankind, let's see that. Let's see if there's evidence to back up the Bible itself, which would then lead credence to God being the real God and no other form of God, no Allah, no Muhammad or Buddhism or anything like that. It has to be our God. So this post comes from a guy who was an atheist. And he says, as an atheist, I thought the Bible was just mythology, fairy tales. But when I earnestly examined the archaeological evidence, I found the exact opposite was true. Here are 10 discoveries that confirm the Bible's historical accuracy. Again, these are just 10, but there are even more than this. And this is why I say people that are honestly looking, if you honestly want to look, you'll find it just like this person did. Because nothing is hidden. You just have to look for it if you actually want to see. So let's look through these really quick. Tel Dan inscription, proving the house of David. For years, historians thought King David was probably a mythical figure. Then in 1993, archaeologists found the Tel Dan inscription, a 9th century BC stone mentioning the house of David. The Bible was right all along. So this is a cool thing. You can go see this stone. I don't know which museum this one is in, but I'm probably going to look it up after this episode to see if it's anywhere near me. But yeah, they thought that King David was some mythical person, that he was only mentioned in the Bible and nowhere else, until they found this thing, this Tel Dan stone, and they were able to find that, no, David was talked about there as well. Now let's see some more, because we got more evidence here too. This one, hopefully I'm not mispronouncing this, the Mesha Stele, it's the Moabite stone. Many doubted the biblical wars between Israel and Moab. Then in 1868, the Mesha Stele was discovered, a 9th century BC inscription from King Mesha of Moab. It mentions Israel, King Omri, and their conflicts, just like 2 Kings chapter 3 describes. So a lot of these civilizations that Israel fought against, when God gave them the victory, a lot of the times there, and the judgment that was being pronounced on these people that Israel was fighting against, part of their judgment was to get wiped out, where there would be no trace of them anymore. And so that's why it's been difficult for us to find a lot of these people groups that the Bible talks about. And we think, oh, they never existed. We've been digging around this area for years. We haven't found anything until God gives them a little Easter egg and they find a little something. And then it's like, oh yeah, the biblical account is accurate. So don't let that deter you when people, sometimes some historians or some archaeologists mention, oh, we haven't found this group. That just means they haven't found them yet. But you can rest assured it is true, just like it was in this case with the Moabites. Number 3, the Cyrus cylinder. Many people thought the Bible exaggerated King Cyrus's decree allowing Jews to return from exile. But then the Cyrus cylinder was found, proving the biblical account in Ezra 1 verses 1 through 4. The Persian king really did set captives free, just like the Bible said. So you can see that account there on that cylinder. It's so awesome to have something physical that shows what God had already talked about in the Word. And the thing about King Cyrus too, this is going to go into our next point when we get to the prophecy part at the end. This was something that God had predicted before King Cyrus was even born. He didn't even exist. Hundreds of years prior to that, God said that Cyrus was going to be the one to release the captives from Israel and let them return back to Jerusalem. Number 4, the Sennacherib prism. Critics once doubted the biblical story of Assyria besieging Judah under King Hezekiah. Then the Sennacherib prism was found. It describes the invasion, but notably does not mention capturing Jerusalem, just as the Bible says in 2 Kings 18-19. So the Sennacherib prism, this one's kind of cool. I wish I could see this one in person. Again, another one I'm gonna have to look up and see where it's at, because this one is one of the greatest stories when they were coming to take over Jerusalem, and they were coming to take over Judah, and King Hezekiah was just so distraught. All the people were terrified. Assyria had been just destroying everybody, and the way that they would win all these wars is they would just come, they'd encircle around whatever city they're trying to take over and basically starve the people out, because the people couldn't leave or else they'd have to start fighting. They couldn't win the fight, so eventually they'd run out of water and food, and then once they were at their weakest, then Assyria would come in and kill everybody, torture everybody. And it was so bad that oftentimes these towns would commit mass suicide because they figured it'd be better for them to kill themselves than to suffer under the torture of the Assyrians. So these guys were no joke. They had taken over a lot of people, and when they came and they were threatening King Hezekiah, he took the message that they sent him and he took it into to the Lord's presence and read it to him and said, Lord, you see what they're doing. You got to save me. And so that's why I love this story so much, this account of this event, because it shows how much we should rely on God. When we get that bad news, when we get those things that happen in our life that are overwhelming, that are too much for us, just like King Assyria, the king of Assyria and his army was too much for Jerusalem, too much for Judah, too much for King Hezekiah. He had to go take it to the Lord to fight his battle, and we should do that same thing. All right, let's go to the next one. The Pilate stone. For centuries, skeptics questioned if Pontius Pilate was even a real person. Then in 1961, the Pilate stone was discovered in Caesarea, confirming him as the prefect of Judea, the same title the Gospels give the man who sentenced Jesus to death. So again, historians didn't even think Pilate was a real person because they didn't have enough records of him, and now they have it. So once again, the Bible's right, and us as people were wrong. Number 6, the pool of Bethesda. John chapter 5 verse 2 describes a pool in Jerusalem with 5 porticos where Jesus healed a man. Skeptics couldn't find it and dismissed it as fiction. But recently, archaeologists uncovered the pool and it matched the Bible's description in stunning detail. So once again, I'm going to sound like a broken record here. Number 7, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Critics often claim the Old Testament was corrupted over time. Then the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1947. These ancient texts, dating as far back as 250 BC, show that the Bible has been accurately preserved for over 2,000 years. So this one is the one I'm most interested in because it's actually at a museum in Southern California, close by to where I live. It's going to be there through September. So I'm definitely making it a plan to go look at these in person just to see the piece of history. Not that I feel like I need the proof, but it's cool. And to know that, a lot of people talk about, the Bible's been corrupted, XYZ. Well, you can look at something that was written thousands and thousands of years ago, and it's still matching the current Bible that we have today. So that lets you know they've been able to preserve it. God has been able to preserve it and get his word to his people so that they could get to know him and have a relationship with him. So this is awesome, and I can't wait to see this one. Number 8, Hezekiah's tunnel. Some argued that the 2 Kings chapter 20 verse 20 story of Hezekiah building a tunnel was just legend. Then archaeologists found Hezekiah's tunnel, still standing today, with an inscription inside proving it was built during his reign. The Bible was right again. So this was a tunnel that Hezekiah made so that they could get in and out of the city to get supplies when they were under siege. So you can go check this out today if you're able to get to Israel. I would love to see this, definitely on the bucket list. And there's a nice picture of it here where you can kind of see inside. And of course, they built rails and steps in it to make it safer, but the actual carving of the tunnel still the same as it was back then. Number 9, Baruch's seal. For years, skeptics dismissed many biblical figures as fictional. Then a clay seal was found in Jerusalem bearing the name of Baruch, son of Neriah, Jeremiah's scribe. And this is Jeremiah chapter 36, verse 4. A tiny artifact confirming the Bible's historical reliability. So just another little Easter egg, another little breadcrumb God is giving us, like, okay, I know you guys are struggling. I know you're doubting. Here's one more thing so that if you still had any doubt, now you know for sure. Even the tiniest detail in my word is true. Let's go to the last one when it comes to the archaeological evidence, and this is the Hittite Empire. The Bible repeatedly mentions the Hittites, but for centuries, skeptics thought they never existed. Then in the early 1900s, archaeologists uncovered vast Hittite ruins in Turkey, proving the skeptics wrong yet again. Genesis chapter 23 and 2 Kings chapter 7, verse 6. So once again, more evidence, this time another society that people thought didn't exist just because it was so hard for us to find it. But once again, God was writing his word, and these people groups did exist, just as the Bible described. So let's go now to the last piece of evidence, and that is the prophecy that's in the Bible, because we've proved that the existence of science and the fact that everything's a system shows that there had to be an intelligent designer, there had to be a creator. It's impossible for it to be random. Then we looked at the archaeological evidence that shows that the things that are written in the Bible are true and they exist in physical form today that you can still go and see. So that means it wasn't something that was made up. It wasn't just something that was made up to control people or something to deceive people. These are real things, real events that happen. And so now we're going to look at the prophecy, which is the last major category to me that proves that the Bible is real, that proves that God is real, because God was talking about things and predicting things years, sometimes thousands of years, sometimes hundreds of years in advance of them actually happening. And there's no way anybody could be 100% accurate on those things unless they were all-knowing and unless they were God himself. So this post says, did you know the Bible contains 2,500 prophecies? More than 2,000 have already been fulfilled with perfect accuracy. That leaves about 500 still to come, revealing Christ's return, the final judgment, and the establishment of God's kingdom. The accuracy of prophecy affirms the Bible's divine origin and absolute truth. Okay, so just to give you guys a scope of how crazy it is that over 2,000 of the biblical prophecies have already been fulfilled accurately, it's basically a statistical impossibility. So there's a guy he's a mathematician named Peter Stoner, and he started calculating various prophecies of the Bible and the odds of them just coming true just by random, just by happenstance. First, he looked at the Old Testament prophecies. He looked at prophecies just concerning Jesus. He broke it down into several different categories. And from his conclusion, just if 48, I'm going to spare you guys a lot. I'll put this article, I'll link this article in the description as well. But just if 48 of those things came true, the odds are, 1 in 10 to the 157th power. Again, that's a lot of zeros. And imagine that's just 48. Now imagine if you're saying over 2,000, it's statistically impossible. It's just like the odds of the universe being random, and yet science and physics and math and all those things work out perfectly without anybody creating it. Just like those odds are impossible, the same amount of odds are impossible that all these prophecies that are written in the Bible have come true. And you can say, well, what if they wrote those things after the events? Well, we have, like I said, the archaeological evidence that we just looked at. Those things can be dated back prior to the actual events happening. So in that example of Cyrus, who allowed the people of Israel to go back to Jerusalem, he was king of Persia, he allowed them to go back. Isaiah prophesied that 150 years before it became true. So Cyrus wasn't even born yet. He wasn't even a person yet. And yet it was written down that it's going to be this person by this name, and then it happens later. So the prophecy shows that it's not just an intelligent creator, it's not just anybody, it's God. It's the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. It's Jesus Christ. It's the Holy Spirit, because these accounts written in the Bible are the ones that have come true after they have been written. And there are still things remaining that will come to pass. They will come true. Christ will return on the earth again. He will set up his kingdom, and he will create the earth, the heaven and the earth new again. So it's in our best interest to get in line with what God is doing. And thank God we have a good God. So we only benefit from serving him. Only good. Obviously, we have a tough time in this life, and there are struggles and things that we're going to have, and God told us we would have. But overall, we only benefit from surrendering to God, giving our life to him, and serving him. And there's nothing for us to fear when he's got our back, because he created everything, and nothing is too small, and nothing is too big, nothing is too hard for him. So nothing slips through his hands. So I'm glad that we have a relationship with God. I encourage everybody, keep your relationship with God stronger and keep growing in him. Don't become stagnant. Keep seeking the next level that you can reach in knowing God, and try to bring somebody else along for the ride with you. All right, until the next time, I hope this episode was very helpful. Hope you have a blessed week. Peace.